She stood in the hallway, holding a set of keys that no longer unlocked her own home. Her billionaire husband said she was the only one until the elevator doors opened and a little girl with his eyes ran straight into his arms. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where every story is rooted in real emotion, quiet strength, and unforgettable lessons. If you're new here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you've been with us a while, this one might just stay with you long after the screen fades to black. This is the story of Alexis, a grounded designer who believed in warm spaces, quiet love, and the kind of marriage built on trust. She didn't want his headlines, his jets, or his last name in lights. But the man she married had 2 wives, and by the time she found out, she already had the power to tear down everything he built. Quietly, legally, completely. Stay with us. Because what Alexis did next wasn't loud. It was final. Alexis never cared about fame, marble floors, or luxury catalogues. She liked sunlight that poured through windows in the morning, books stacked sideways on warm oak shelves, homes that breathed with life, not staged for social feeds. She worked alone, no large design firm, no assistants, just her sketch pad, and her quiet sense of order. And that's exactly why Cole Winter found her. His assistant had called her one morning. No big pitch, no flattery. Mr. Winter saw a small feature on your work in heirloom spaces. He liked your tone, your simplicity. Alexis nearly laughed. That article had 3 paragraphs, 1 photo. But something about the way the assistant said your tone stayed with her. She met Cole the next afternoon. The estate in Calabasas was nothing short of intimidating. Gates that whispered money, walls that hid secrets. He stood at the far end of the courtyard when she arrived. No smile, just stillness. But when he shook her hand, he said, "You don't design like you're trying to impress anyone." I like that. No one had ever said that to her before. Inside the main house, he walked ahead of her but always glanced back, making sure she was still there. "I want this place to feel like a life was lived here," he said. "Not like someone bought it to show off." His voice was low, measured, controlled. Alexis noticed how he touched nothing, not a table, not a chair, as if he didn't trust what was around him. She jotted down notes quietly as he spoke. When she looked up, he was watching her, not the furniture. In the weeks that followed, Alexis came back several times. She moved room to room, barefoot most days, sketching layouts on the backs of blueprints and napkins. She liked the quiet. She liked that Cole never hovered. But one day, as she stepped into the sunroom, she felt his eyes on her. "Do you always work like this?" he asked. "Like what?" "Like the house is telling you what it wants to be." She blushed. "I don't think I'm that spiritual. I just like when homes feel like the people inside them." He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "You make things feel safe." That day, he didn't leave the room. He stayed in the doorway, silent, watching, not creepy, not controlling, just present. And Alexis, who usually preferred being invisible on the job, didn't mind. 3 weeks into the project, she brought coffee one morning. He took it without saying anything. As they stood in the foyer looking at flooring samples, he finally said, "I feel more myself when you're around. That's rare." She didn't answer, not because she didn't feel it too, but because the words felt heavy, like a secret passed through a locked door. They didn't kiss that day, but something shifted. The next week, she found a note taped to her sketch pad. "Don't change the reading nook in the library. It already feels like you." It was the first time he signed anything with just an initial. Alexis told herself she wasn't falling for him. He was a client. He was clearly wealthy, and he kept his world tight, his schedule, his staff, his silence. But Cole didn't try to impress her. He didn't flash money, didn't boast. He asked her what kind of childhood bedroom she had and why she liked quiet fabrics more than loud colors. He paid attention to the little things, and that's what made it dangerous. After a month, he asked her out. Not with flowers, not with a big gesture. He simply said, "I don't want to pretend this is just about the house anymore." She looked at him for a long time. "Why me?" He didn't flinch. Because you're not looking at what I own, you're looking at me, and no one does that anymore. Their first dinner wasn't at a five-star place. It was at his private guest house, on the patio, 1 candle, 2 glasses, a grilled fish he made himself. He burned it slightly. They laughed. It was the first time she saw him drop his guard. I built companies to stay in control, he admitted that night. But you make me want to rest. She reached across the table and touched his hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. They started seeing each other quietly. No announcements, no posts. He told her he didn't want anyone ruining something real. She believed him. Alexis had never felt more seen, more considered. He didn't shower her with jewelry or designer gifts. He once brought her a handmade notebook and said, "You'll sketch better ideas in something that feels like you." She started leaving clothes at his house. Then she started sleeping over. Then she never really left. 6 months in, Cole proposed. He didn't kneel. He simply held her hand at the vineyard overlooking the valley and said, "I've never trusted peace until now. I want to build it with you." Alexis said yes. Not because it was sudden, but because it was calm, because he looked like a man who'd been waiting for this. They married with only 10 guests. No photos for the press, no write-up in the magazines. That's what she loved about it. Their love was sacred, private, safe, or so she thought. The vineyard stayed quiet that day. No cameras, no posts. Just 2 vows whispered under California sun, surrounded by grapevines and soft wind. Alexis wore a simple dress, soft cream, sleeveless, her hair in a low bun with a pearl pin her mother once wore. Cole's hand didn't shake when he placed the ring on her finger, but his jaw clenched, like he was holding something back. She thought it was emotion. She didn't know it was guilt. They moved into the Calabasas estate after the wedding. It had taken nearly a year to finish renovating, and now every corner bore her fingerprints, her vision, her touch, her design. "I didn't just marry you," Cole said one night, turning to her in bed. "I married the home you made." He had moments like that, raw, direct. He'd lean in, whisper something gentle, and then pull away like he'd said too much. Alexis would hold him, let him breathe. She thought he was healing from something. Maybe he was, but she never asked what. Their first year passed quietly. Cole traveled often. Board meetings, business retreats, tech summits in places she couldn't pronounce. Sometimes she joined him. Sometimes she didn't. "I don't want you to get bored sitting through pitch decks," he'd say. She trusted him, mostly, but occasionally, when he came home and went straight to the shower without kissing her, she wondered. When she mentioned a holiday trip with friends, he said, "You don't need them. You've got me." She thought it was love. Now she'd call it isolation. Still, their life looked perfect from the outside. He added her name to the Vineyard Trust, not just the home. "You've given me more than design," he told her. "You've made this life real." On her 33rd birthday, he gave her a sketchbook bound in deep brown leather. Inside, he wrote, "For the rooms you've yet to create, and the world we've yet to build." She cried reading that. He kissed her hands, then her cheek. But later that night, he left the room to take a late investor call that lasted over an hour. When he returned, he didn't mention who it was. Alexis didn't dig. She didn't want to become that person, the kind who checked call logs, who guessed passwords, who lived half inside her chest and half inside her fears. Instead, she hosted dinners, baked on Sundays, laid out his favorite linen shirts when he packed. She was the calm he always said he needed. But sometimes she felt like she was calming a storm she couldn't see. The first time she noticed something strange, it wasn't a phone call. It was a drawer in his home office, locked. Cole didn't lock drawers. He was precise, controlled, but not paranoid. When she asked about it lightly one morning, he said, "Old tax paperwork. Not exciting." She smiled and nodded. But that night, the lock had been changed. She told herself she was overthinking. He had told her everything, trusted her, shared assets, and then She found the note. It wasn't dramatic. Just a small piece of paper tucked behind his bathroom mirror. It fell when she was replacing a light bulb. A child's handwriting. "Happy birthday, Daddy. I love you and Mommy so much." The paper had crayon drawings, a sun, a balloon, a cake, and 3 stick figures. One had a tie, one had a red dress, one had pigtails. Alexis stood frozen in the bathroom, staring. The note had no name, no date, but she hadn't written it. And she'd never met a child who called Cole Daddy. She waited 2 days. She planned to ask him, calmly, directly. But when he came home that Friday, he kissed her shoulder like always, handed her flowers, told her they were going to Napa the next weekend. She swallowed the question. She smiled instead. She wasn't sure why. Maybe part of her wanted to believe it was something else. Maybe she was afraid of what she already knew. The weekend in Napa was quiet. They walked the vineyards, tasted wines, slept with the windows open. But every time he looked away, she saw the flash of something guarded behind his eyes. And when she leaned her head on his shoulder during the tasting, he flinched before relaxing. That was the moment she started journaling again. Not about design, about doubt. She never confronted him, but she started writing down what didn't make sense. The drawer, the call logs, the birthday note, his trips to New York, the way his voice changed when she asked about anything before their wedding. One morning, after he left for a meeting, she walked through the house with her journal in hand. She sat in the sunroom, the one she designed with soft tan chairs and warm white throws. It had been their favorite room. Now it felt like it belonged to someone else. She wrote, "If he built a life before this one, why do I feel like the second draft?" She closed the journal and told herself, "Not yet. Don't accuse him until you're sure." But the seed had already been planted, and it was growing. The annual Westwood Design Auction was one of the few events Alexis agreed to attend every year. Not because she liked dressing up. She didn't care for flashbulbs or handshakes that meant nothing. But this one always brought in unique pieces. History-rich furniture, hand-woven baskets from small towns, clay vases with imperfections that made them priceless. Cole didn't go with her this time. He was flying out to Austin for a last-minute investor dinner. He said it was too boring for him anyway, so Alexis went alone. She wore black linen, comfortable heels, and a single silver bracelet, one Cole had given her on their anniversary. The air was soft with jasmine and old wood. She was flipping through a catalogue of table listings when she felt someone step beside her. A woman, tall, elegant, hair twisted into a perfect low knot. She held a glass of red wine in one hand, her other hand resting gently. Against the edge of the reclaimed wood table, Alexis had been admiring. "Does he still prefer Italian leather over love?" the woman asked. Alexis turned. "Excuse me?" The woman's tone didn't change. "Cole, he always said leather aged better than people. That love was a mood, not a plan." Alexis stared, her mouth slightly open. "Do I know you?" The woman smiled faintly. "No, but you know him." Then she sipped her wine, nodded once, and walked off. Not fast, not flustered, like she had delivered a message and nothing more. Alexis stood there, catalogue forgotten in her hand, the warmth in her face drained. She didn't chase after the woman, didn't ask anyone who she was. She just walked outside, found a bench under the olive trees, and sat. She didn't tell Cole right away. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the woman's voice again. Italian leather over love. She didn't know what disturbed her more, that the woman spoke with such certainty, or that Cole's name rolled off her lips with the casualness of a past lover. The next morning, over breakfast, Alexis poured orange juice and slid the bowl of cut fruit across the table. Then she said, without looking up, "Someone recognized your name at the auction." He glanced up from his phone. "Yeah?" "She asked me if you still prefer Italian leather over love." He blinked, then smiled thinly. "Well, that's cryptic. She said it like she knew you." He took a sip of coffee. Probably someone I turned down in business. That crowd's full of designer egos. You'd be shocked how many people feel slighted over a contract or a cancelled deal. Alexis watched his eyes as he spoke. Too calm, too ready. She nodded slowly. Right. That afternoon, she went through her journal again. The drawer, the note, the phone calls that never got answered in front of her, the sudden business trips to New York. Now this woman, she wrote down a new line. The past is bleeding into the present, and I think it's trying to find me. A week later, she got the first call. Blocked number. She answered anyway. Silence. Then, a click. This happened 3 more times that week. No voice. No voicemail. No background noise. Just a quiet pause, like someone listening for the sound of her breathing. Cole noticed she was quieter. He asked if she was okay. She nodded. I think I just need a break, she said. He kissed her forehead. Let's go to the vineyard next weekend. Just us. We'll drink something expensive and forget the world. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She didn't want to forget the world. She wanted to understand what was wrong with hers. The 5th call came the following Thursday. This time, a voice spoke. Low, calm, unmistakably female. You should ask him what name he uses in New York. Then, silence. Alexis waited. No click this time, just the quiet buzz of an open line. Then, it cut. She stared at her phone. The message wasn't aggressive. It wasn't even emotional. It was a breadcrumb, and she followed it. That night, Alexis waited until Cole was in the shower. She unlocked his briefcase, which he had carelessly tossed near the bedroom chair. Inside was nothing unusual, tablets, files, cufflinks, but his laptop sat beside it. Open, unlocked. She clicked through nothing. She couldn't do it. Her hand hovered over the keyboard, but her stomach turned. She shut it, closed the bag, and walked outside instead. She sat on the back porch with her journal in her lap, legs folded, eyes on the moonlit vines. She didn't know who the woman was. She didn't know why Cole had a drawer he'd relocked, but she knew something now with chilling clarity. Whatever story he told her, she wasn't the only one who'd heard it. Cole returned from his tech summit 3 days later. Same smile, same cologne, same ritual, dropping his duffel near the stairs, loosening his tie with one hand, and walking straight to Alexis in the kitchen. He kissed her shoulder like always. Miss me? She gave a small smile. Of course. He slid a gift bag across the island. Black, ribboned, heavy. Inside was a pair of handcrafted Italian leather gloves. She held them up slowly. Still prefer Italian leather over love? She asked softly. He paused, then chuckled. What? She didn't repeat herself. He leaned closer. You okay? She nodded. Tired. That night, she watched him sleep. One hand under the pillow, the other resting over his chest. So peaceful, so still. Alexis had memorized the curve of his jaw, the way his shoulders rose and fell when he slept. It was hard reconciling this image with the truth she hadn't yet confirmed, that maybe this man, who had memorized her coffee order, built her, a private library, whispered her name like prayer, wasn't just hers, that he never had been. The next morning, she took her coffee out to the patio. The vineyard was still. Grits, their dog, lay curled on the mat near her chair. She opened her journal and read from the top. Locked drawer child's note behind mirror woman at auction calls. What name does he use in New York? Her fingers gripped the pen tighter. Not one of these things by itself would make a person leave. But together, they spelled one word she didn't want to say out loud. Betrayal. He came out an hour later. Shirt half-buttoned, hair still wet. Let's take the day off, he said. Just us. Wine, blanket, hammock. She looked up. I have a meeting with a fabric supplier. Cancel it. She smiled faintly. You sound like someone who gets what he wants. He stepped forward, kissed her temple. Not always. She wanted to ask him then. Wanted to say, tell me about the girl who drew you a birthday card. The woman who knew your voice. The child with your eyes. But she didn't. Not because she was scared of the answer, because she already knew it. Alexis had always believed in timing, in life, in design, in confrontation. She once told a client, "You don't knock down a wall because it looks suspicious. You wait, study, understand what it's holding up." She treated this the same way. She studied him, watched his routines, noted the differences between how he held his phone now, face down, tighter grip, the longer showers, the sudden avoidance of weekend trips. And then, the folder that disappeared from the home office. One night, after dinner, Cole pulled her in close on the couch. "Do you think," he whispered, "we'll live here forever?" She rested her head on his chest. "I don't know. I hope we do. I want to grow old with you here." She looked at the fire. Soft, orange light flickering across the windows she had designed herself. She imagined him sitting in this room 20 years later, but she didn't imagine herself there anymore. 2 days later, she found the hidden passport. It was in a shoebox, under some out-of-season jackets in the hallway closet. The name on it read, Cole Everett. His real name was Cole Winter. Same face, different life. The photo looked newer than their marriage license. She took a photo of the document, put it back, didn't ask, didn't flinch. That night, she curled up in bed next to him like always. When he reached for her, she let him. But her hand didn't stay on his chest the way it used to. It rested on her own, over her heart, the only thing that hadn't lied to her yet. The next morning, she called her attorney. Nothing dramatic, no threats, no divorce filings, just a review. "Can you remind me," she asked, "what my name is on in the marital trust?" The attorney answered easily. "The vineyard is under joint ownership. The Calabasas estate is yours and his jointly, but the operating rights and title protections allow you to sell without his consent if you choose to." She took a slow breath. "Thank you," she said. Then she hung up. Alexis didn't cry, didn't scream. She planned, not out of vengeance, out of survival, out of clarity. Because whatever Cole was hiding, he did it while looking her in the eyes and telling her she was his peace. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that even the cracks in their story sounded like music? If you felt Alexis's silence in your chest, drop a comment below. Like this video if you've ever had to hold back the truth until the time was right. And make sure you're subscribed, because what she finds in New York changes everything. The invitation came in an email from an industry contact. "We'd love to feature you on our new Voices in Interior Design panel. Live event in New York. Travel and lodging fully covered." Alexis didn't hesitate. She accepted within the hour. When she told Cole about it that night over dinner, he barely blinked. "That city's chaos. Why would you want to go? It's a good opportunity. It'll help the studio." Exposure matters now. He chewed slower. "Didn't we talk about Napa next weekend?" She wiped the side of her wine glass. "You said you might have board meetings, so I made other plans." He nodded once, didn't argue. But he didn't offer to come with her either. She flew out 2 days later, alone, first class, booked by the design board. Cole didn't call the first night, just sent a single text, "You'll be amazing. Let me know if you need anything." She stared at the message for a full minute. Then she turned her phone face down. The next morning she sat on a panel with 3 other women, all rising stars in the industry. They talked about texture, color trends, and eco-sourcing. But Alexis's thoughts kept drifting. To the shoebox, to the crayon note, to the passport, to the voice on the phone that said, "Ask him what name he uses in New York." That afternoon, after her talk, she stayed behind in the city and followed her own list. She didn't have an address, just a memory. 2 years ago, Cole had accidentally left a utility bill on the desk. She remembered the name of the company, the street prefix, the handwriting. She told herself it meant nothing at the time. Now, it was a thread. She pulled it. Upper Manhattan, near Central Park. The building was tall, glass-heavy, with a doorman and fresh flowers in the lobby. Not flashy, but expensive. She walked in confidently, like she'd lived there before. "Hi, I'm here for Unit 19 Billions," she said softly. The concierge checked the sheet. "Go ahead. Elevators open." No hesitation. She stepped in. Her hands were shaking in her coat pockets. The elevator moved fast, too fast. When the doors opened, she saw a long hallway with wide-paneled floors and abstract art on the walls. Then she heard the lock click from one of the doors. Cole stepped out, wearing grey slacks and a navy button-up shirt. He looked relaxed. He looked home. In one hand, he held a child's jacket. In the other, a stuffed bunny. Behind him, a woman stepped into view. Hair swept up, wearing flats, holding a small tote bag. And then, a little girl ran forward, straight into his legs. "Daddy." Alexis couldn't move. Cole turned, saw her. The hallway collapsed into silence. The little girl looked up, same eyes, same dimples, same hairline, and Alexis finally understood. She hadn't been imagining the note, the drawer, the calls, the whispers. She hadn't been paranoid. She had been chosen second. Cole said her name, once, quietly. The woman behind him froze. The child clung tighter. Alexis didn't respond. She didn't yell. She didn't drop her purse or demand answers. She just stepped back into the elevator and let the doors close. The ride down felt endless. Her reflection stared back at her from the chrome panels, calm face, trembling lips. She walked straight out the building and into the cold air. The wind pressed against her chest, but it wasn't as heavy as the truth she'd been carrying. At the corner, she found a bench. She sat, texted Cole. "Don't come home until I say. You've already made your choices. I'm about to make mine." Alexis landed back in California late the next night. She didn't cry on the plane, didn't shake, didn't speak. She sat by the window, hands folded in her lap, watching the dark below her. She didn't call anyone, didn't text him again. She kept her phone off the whole flight. The house felt too quiet when she walked in. The wine glasses were still on the counter. The sweater he wore the day he left for the summit was draped over the dining chair. And on the hallway table sat a small gift bag with a note tucked inside. "For when you get back. I missed you. See." She didn't open it. She didn't touch it. She walked straight upstairs. By morning, she had already started making calls. One to her attorney, one to the estate agent, one to the private broker who once said, "If you ever want to move something quiet and fast, I'm your guy." No one questioned her. No one hesitated. When you spoke calmly, clearly, and without rage, people listened. She walked the vineyard twice that week, first alone, then with the buyer's representative. She pointed out where the light hit best in the evening, which sections of soil yielded better grapes, which workers had been with them the longest. She spoke like someone who'd been there forever, not like someone who was preparing to walk away. Her attorney met her at the house 2 days later. "We'll transfer your share of the profits into a separate account under your name," she said. "Everything you're doing is legal. You're not hiding anything." "I'm not here to hide," Alexis replied. "I'm here to leave with what's mine." The woman nodded. "If it helps, this is the cleanest exit I've ever seen." Alexis smiled faintly. "It's not an exit. It's a redesign." She left his office untouched. She didn't dig for more. She didn't need more. She had seen enough. Everything after that was noise. The house sold within 5 days. So did the vineyard. Both private, both clean. No public listings, no headlines, no curiosity. She didn't send Cole updates. She didn't block him either. She just stopped answering. Silence became her boundary. By the time Cole flew home, the main hallway was filled with boxes. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea. He stepped inside, confused. "Why are there moving trucks here?" Alexis didn't look up. "Because I sold both properties." His eyes darkened. "What?" "You'll find everything in your inbox. The escrow confirmations, the transfers, the final contracts." He dropped his keys on the counter, hard. "Alexis, "What the hell are you doing?" She stood up and handed him a folder. Inside were 2 marriage records, one with her name, the other dated 2 years before theirs. His face went pale. "I can explain." She tilted her head. "I believed that once. Now, I just listen to actions." He stepped closer. "You don't have to do this." "No, Cole. I already did." Her voice didn't rise. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't threaten, curse, or cry. She had already mourned the truth, quietly, alone, on a cold bench in Manhattan. Now, she was just done. Cole looked around the home they built together. The chairs she picked, the walls she painted, the scent of her still in the kitchen. He blinked hard. "You said this was sacred." She looked him in the eyes. "It was." Then she turned and walked away. The cottage was small. 1 story, white shutters, a gravel path lined with lavender. It sat just outside Santa Barbara, far from Calabasas, far from headlines, far from Cole. Alexis had found it months ago, on a weekend she'd spent alone, driving with the windows down and no destination in mind. She remembered stopping in front of the gate and whispering, "I could breathe here." Now it was hers. Paid in full. No shared deed, no hidden clauses, no name but her own. She didn't tell anyone she was moving. Not her old clients. Not Cole's staff. Not the neighbors they used to toast wine with on summer nights. She packed quietly, room by room. She left the plates he liked. The watch he left by the sink. The leather-bound guest book they never filled. The only things she took were hers. Sketch pads, tea tins, the photo of her and her mother in the garden, and her journal. The first night in the cottage, she lit a candle. She sat by the window, listening to wind through the trees. No hum of power gates. No footsteps echoing across marble floors. No voice behind her asking, "Do you need anything?" while withholding everything. She slept deeply. No dreams. No alarms. And when she woke, sunlight cut through linen curtains and landed on the floor like a quiet promise. She made herself tea. Didn't check her phone. Didn't wonder what Cole was doing. Didn't look back. That afternoon, she unpacked her books one by one. Placed them on open shelves. No symmetry. No theme. Just stories she wanted close. She hung wind chimes near the front porch. She put a soft bench under the oak tree in the yard. She opened the windows, even when it rained. She didn't explain her choices to anyone. Her attorney called the next day. "Everything's finalized," she said. "You're free and clear." Alexis smiled. "Good. Send the final checks where we discussed." "Of course. Do you want us to update your last name?" She paused. "No. Let it stay." The following week, she started designing again, but only on her terms. No big commissions, no luxury renovations. She taught a weekend workshop at a community art center. "How to create peace in your own home," the flyer said. She spoke to 7 women in folding chairs about color temperatures, soft lines, emotional placement. None of them knew her history. None of them asked. That was the beauty of beginning. You didn't have to explain what you left behind. One night, as she sat on the porch journaling, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. She stared at the screen, then turned the phone face down and went back to writing. The silence didn't scare her anymore. It felt earned. The article dropped without warning. Monday morning. Headline: Billionaire CEO Cole Winter named in private marriage scandal. 2 wives, 2 states, no public statements. Alexis read it from her phone while sipping tea. She didn't flinch. The photo used was an old one. Cole at a gala, smiling slightly, one hand in his pocket. The subtext: one woman in California, another in New York. No legal bigamy. But the timeline, shaky. It wasn't the media storm everyone expected, but it was loud enough to matter. She got 5 messages that morning. Old clients, industry acquaintances, a few people who had always hovered near her name but never really knew her. Each message opened the same way: "I just saw the article. I'm so sorry. Is it true?" "We're here if you need anything." She replied to none of them. Instead, she placed her phone in a drawer and returned to her sketchpad. Cole didn't release a statement, but the board at his main firm did. Neutral tone, full of polished language, personal matters, no bearing on leadership, continued commitment to investors, but the ripples started to show. One partner pulled out of a pending merger. Another board member quietly resigned. The stock held steady, for now. But the perception was shifting, and Cole hated perception shifts. Alexis didn't speak to the press, even when a reporter showed up at her cottage with soft eyes and a recorder in her pocket. "I think people would be empowered by your story," she said. "Women everywhere." Alexis held the door gently and said, "Some things are powerful because they stay private." Then she closed it, without noise, without bitterness. She took a walk that evening. The wind was softer. The world felt less like it was watching her, because she refused to perform for it. Later, in her journal, she wrote, "I didn't need to destroy him. I needed to find myself outside of him." That week, she launched a small design series online. Nothing flashy, just short clips. Corners that comfort, where light lands matters. Design is what you allow yourself to keep. People started watching, quietly, steadily. She didn't speak about Cole once, and still, people connected with her work more than ever. A letter arrived on Friday. No return address, just a card. Inside, "I understand now why you left. I still don't know how to live with it, but I understand." See, she folded the card once, placed it in a drawer, didn't respond. She wasn't cruel. She was clear. A woman from her workshop stayed after one day, said, "I don't know your full story, but you speak like someone who's come back from a place most people don't survive." Alexis smiled. Then, "I'm doing something right." The world moved on. The press found new headlines, but those who knew, they remembered. Not because Alexis made them, but because she didn't need to. And that silence, it echoed louder than any scandal ever could. It was almost dusk when she heard the knock. 3 soft taps, not rushed, not forceful. She stood at the window, holding her tea, unmoving. No delivery truck, no unfamiliar car, just a man on the other side of her wooden door, alone. Cole looked smaller than she remembered. His suit was wrinkled, his tie was gone. There was stubble on his jaw, a tiredness under his eyes that no wealth could cover. He held nothing, no flowers, no gifts, no explanations, just himself. Alexis didn't speak at first. She opened the door but didn't step aside. He didn't ask to come in. "I didn't know where else to go," he said quietly. She studied his face, not for answers, just to see if he still looked like the man who once kissed her in their library and whispered, "You're the only real thing in my world." He didn't. "I saw the article," he continued. She nodded once. He shifted on his feet. "You didn't talk to them?" "No. Why not?" She sipped her tea. "Because they weren't asking anything I hadn't already lived through." Cole let out a slow breath. "I thought I could manage both lives." She didn't respond. "I thought I was protecting everyone." She blinked. "No. You were protecting your image." His mouth opened, then closed. She stepped back slightly, still in the doorway. "Why are you here, Cole?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I miss hearing your voice, even if it's saying nothing." She looked at him for a long time, then stepped outside and closed the door behind her. She didn't sit, didn't lean, just stood with her arms folded. "You always used silence like a shield," she said. "I used to think that meant you were private. Now I know it meant you were hiding." He looked down. "I loved you, Alexis." "No," she said gently. "You loved what I made you feel, safe, understood, whole." "That's different from loving me." He looked up. "Are you with someone?" She didn't answer, because the answer didn't belong to him. Because his question wasn't about her, it was about what he'd lost. "Do you hate me?" he asked. "No." "Then what do you feel?" She exhaled slowly, Relief. That word hit harder than any insult ever could. He stepped back. Do you want me to leave? I don't want anything from you, Cole. And that's the difference now. He stood for a moment longer, then nodded, turned, and walked back down the gravel path. Alexis didn't watch him leave. She opened her front door, stepped back inside, closed it softly, and let the silence settle again, not like an ending, but like the pause that comes before a brand new beginning. The next morning, Alexis didn't replay Cole's visit. She didn't journal about it, didn't text anyone, didn't cry. She watered her plants, answered 2 design emails, and returned to her studio before noon. Some moments deserved reflection, others didn't. Because sometimes, when something ends, you don't need closure. You need distance. The local bookstore had called the week before. Would you be open to designing a quiet corner for us? Something soft, intimate. You don't have to go big. Alexis said yes. The project was simple. A reading nook, natural textures, muted earth tones, floor cushions, a hand-woven throw. That's where she met Elias. He ran a nearby print shop, stopped in to pick up 3 custom journals, wore soft brown pants and a linen shirt with rolled sleeves, paint stains near his wrists. His voice wasn't loud, but it lingered when he spoke. He didn't ask her name right away, didn't flirt. He complimented the texture of the woven rug she chose. Looks like something you'd want to sit on after a long week of pretending you're fine. She laughed before she realized she had. That hadn't happened in a while. He saw her again a few days later. Same store, different project, same look in his eyes, calm, direct, unbothered by awkwardness. He leaned over a crate of second-hand books. If you were a room, I think you'd be the one in the back of an old house. Quiet, warm, and always facing the morning light. She blinked, then smiled. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time. They didn't exchange numbers that day, but she knew she'd see him again. And she did. At the cafe, at the park, at the art market downtown. Each time, his energy stayed the same. Safe, still, whole. He never asked where she came from, only what kind of home she was building now. One Sunday morning, as they walked a quiet trail, he glanced at her and said, "You hold your shoulders like someone who's had to protect too much." She looked at him for a moment. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you look like you know how to carry everything. But I hope one day you won't have to." No man had ever said that to her. She didn't respond. But later that night, she thought about it. They started meeting once a week. Nothing official. No labels. He'd bring her fresh-pressed sketch paper. She'd bring him loose-leaf tea. They sat, walked, laughed sometimes, cried never. She liked that about him. He never pushed. He never assumed. He never compared. One evening, he asked gently, "What's your favorite kind of light?" She answered without thinking, "The kind that lands on your face before you open your eyes and reminds you you made it." He smiled. "I figured." The rain started before sunrise, not heavy, just a quiet rhythm against the windows. Alexis wrapped herself in a grey cardigan, brewed cinnamon tea, and pulled her sketchpad onto her lap. Her fingers hovered over the page, but no lines came. Not that day. Elias showed up late morning. No umbrella. Just a book under his arm and a paper bag that smelled like roasted squash and garlic. "I brought lunch," he said. She opened the door wider. "And no coat. I trust the weather." She smirked. "Do you trust me?" He paused. Enough to be here without asking why. She stepped aside and let him in. They ate on the floor, backs against the bookshelf. She didn't talk much. He didn't mind. After they finished, he glanced over at her closed sketchpad. "Do you want to tell me?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, walked over to the drawer near the kitchen, pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the marriage certificate, and a copy of the second one. She set them both on the floor between them. Elias didn't touch them, didn't shift, didn't ask what happened. He waited. Alexis took a slow breath, and told him, not every detail, but the ones that mattered. The vineyard, the late-night calls, the hallway in New York, the girl with Cole's eyes. The moment she realized she wasn't heartbroken anymore, she was clear. He listened, didn't blink much, didn't nod to pretend he understood. When she stopped talking, he didn't fill the silence. He let it rest, like a book left open between chapters. Then he said quietly, "You didn't burn his house down. No, you redesigned your life." She looked up, and something in her chest softened. He leaned back on his hands. "You know what I like about you?" She waited. "You don't confuse power with noise." She laughed under her breath. "I used to be louder." "No, you used to try to be heard. There's a difference." She sat beside him again, not touching, but closer than before. They watched the rain. No timeline, no expectations, just air and light and space that didn't need permission to feel safe. Later, as he reached for his coat, he paused at the door. "You ever think about loving again?" She looked at him, really looked, and said, "I think about it. I don't run from it." He nodded. "Good," then left. She didn't close the door for a full minute after he was gone. The rain had stopped. The sky hadn't cleared yet, but it didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a secret. She felt seen. Alexis opened a blank notebook the next morning. No prompts, no pressure, no rules. Just a wide cream page and a quiet house that didn't expect anything from her. She didn't write about him. She didn't start with the betrayal. She started with herself. "I used to believe a peaceful home was something you designed. Now I know. It's something you protect." That was the first sentence. She wrote it slowly, then kept going. She wrote about the feeling of walking into her own kitchen without fear, about mornings where no one asked her to explain her silence, about learning how to sit in a room alone and not feel incomplete. And when she finally wrote about Cole, it wasn't angry. It was honest. "He didn't ruin me. He revealed what I hadn't built yet." By the end of the week, she had written 30 pages, not about furniture, not about color palettes, but about reclaiming emotional space. She showed a few pages to the bookstore owner, who asked if she'd ever consider publishing. Alexis smiled. "Only if I don't have to sell it." "You don't," the owner said. "You just have to share it." A month later, she agreed to print 20 copies. No cover photo, just the title, Sacred in Silence, Notes on Leaving Quietly by a Winter. She didn't promote it, didn't post it, but the copies sold out in one weekend. And when she walked into the shop on Monday, there was a note waiting for her behind the register. "I left quietly too. I thought I was the only one. Thank you." No name. Alexis didn't chase who sent it. She didn't need to know, because the words were enough. They reminded her, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the most honest sound you can make. That afternoon, Elias stopped by again, brought fresh honey and handmade bookmarks. He saw the booklet on her table and picked it up gently. "You shared it." She nodded. "Are you afraid of what he'll think?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it's not about him anymore." He smiled, proud, then handed her the bookmarks. "For the women who'll need to remember what page they stopped hiding on." They sat under the oak tree again. No more masks, no more shadows. And Alexis, for the first time since it all began, didn't feel like she was rebuilding. She felt like she had already arrived. The email came from a name she didn't recognize. Subject line, "Would you join us in the hills?" Alexis opened it with curiosity, not expectation. It was from a women's wellness coordinator in Ojai, someone who'd read Sacred in Silence through a friend at the bookstore. The invitation was short, a small retreat, 20 women, no stage, no microphones, just conversations in safe places. "We'd be honored if you'd speak." Alexis sat with it for an hour before replying, "Yes, but I'm not coming as an expert." Just a woman who finally said nothing and meant it. 2 weeks later, she arrived. The venue was a modest eco-lodge surrounded by cypress trees and stone paths. No press, no one asking for bios or resumes. Just open faces, quiet eyes, and a sign near the entry that read, "No one here is broken. We've all just survived something that changed our name." She didn't dress up. Soft sweater, loose pants, no makeup. She sat in a circle on a wool mat, hands tucked between her knees. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't clear her throat or rehearse a line. She said, "I once believed that staying was strength. Now I know. Leaving with your name intact is the real fight." The room went still, not heavy, not tense, just still, like they'd all been waiting to exhale. She talked about design, but not in colors or furniture. She talked about how peace has a layout too. It starts with boundaries, then light, then silence, then space that belongs only to you. One woman cried quietly into her sweater sleeve. Another whispered, "No one has ever described my life out loud like that." Afterward, a younger woman approached her by the garden steps. "Did he ever ask you to stay?" Alexis paused. "Yes." "Did it hurt more to leave?" "No," she said softly. "It hurt more to stay and wonder who I was without him." That night, she sat by the fire pit with 3 women she barely knew. They didn't swap full names. They didn't trade tragedies. They just shared what they were rebuilding. And when Alexis finally said, "I don't regret leaving," none of them looked surprised. They looked relieved, like someone had said the words they'd been carrying for years. As she got into her car the next morning, the coordinator hugged her gently. "You didn't speak to them," she said. "You reminded them they still had a voice." Alexis smiled, and for the first time since her wedding, she said her name without hesitation. "Alexis Winter. Thank you for having me." She didn't drop the name to make a statement. She used it because it no longer scared her, because it didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to the woman who took it back. The drive home was slow. She kept the windows down the whole way back from Ojai. No music, just the hum of tires on the road and the occasional bird song in the trees lining the curves. She didn't rush. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. The retreat didn't change her. It confirmed her. When she stepped back into the cottage, it didn't feel quiet. It felt alive. The kind of alive that doesn't ask to be seen, only felt. The scent of dried lavender near the window, the soft echo of her footsteps on the wood, the way the light curled across the floor like it had waited all weekend for her return. Her answering machine blinked once. One message. She pressed play. Elias's voice filled the room. "You don't owe anyone your story, Alexis, but I hope you know you're still allowed to tell it whenever and however you choose." Then a pause. "Also, I left fresh lemon muffins by your door, and I may or may not have borrowed your pruning shears. I'll return them. Maybe. Probably." She smiled. Not a wide one, but real. She found the muffins inside a paper bag, with her name written in neat handwriting. No punctuation, no note. She ate one standing barefoot in the kitchen. Still warm, still safe. That evening, she sat in the garden under the oak tree. She lit one candle, opened her journal, and didn't write. She just looked up at the sky, slowly dimming from gold to ash blue, and she breathed. A neighbor passed by with their dog and waved. Alexis waved back. They didn't stop for small talk. They didn't need to. It was enough. Her phone buzzed later that night. A message from an unknown number. "They're running another article tomorrow. It names me. I'm sorry." She stared at it for a while, then deleted it. She didn't reply, didn't engage, because his consequences weren't hers to manage anymore. She had already chosen peace. And once chosen, peace doesn't argue with noise. She brewed tea, folded laundry, watered her succulents, and fell asleep with her hand resting lightly on the notebook beside her bed, not because she had something urgent to say, but because she no longer feared the silence. It had become her home. Have you ever reached a point where silence wasn't weakness, but freedom? If Alexis's journey reminded you that peace doesn't have to be loud, leave a comment below. Tap that like button if you've ever walked away from what wasn't yours to fix. And make sure you're subscribed, because the final chapters reveal What happens when quiet strength outlasts everything built on lies? The headline dropped on a Thursday. No warning, no leaks, no interviews. Just a sharp, black and white photo of Coles stepping out of a courthouse, head down, surrounded by 2 attorneys. The headline read, "Former CEO faces ethics investigation over undisclosed marital conflicts and asset transfers." Alexis didn't see it until late afternoon. She'd spent the morning adjusting tile selections for a local yoga studio. She didn't wake up hoping for the headline. She didn't fear it either. The article laid out everything. Coles overlapping marriages, the trust fund transfers, an anonymous tip about discrepancies in the marital property disclosures, investors pulling out, a likely board dismissal vote in the coming days. It wasn't scandalous in a tabloid sense. It was clinical, cold, just the facts. That made it hit harder. Alexis didn't flinch when she read it. She didn't read it twice. She didn't share it with anyone. She simply powered her phone off and placed it face down on her desk. Then she reached for a sketch pad and got back to work. Elias stopped by that evening. He didn't mention the news. He brought fresh pears, a book on natural lighting, and a set of handmade coasters etched with wildflowers. When she opened the door, he just smiled. "You look calm," he said. "I am." They didn't talk about coal. They didn't need to. After dinner, they sat by the fire. No wine. Just warm apple tea and the soft creak of her old wood chair. Elias leaned back, his ankle crossed over his knee. "You ever think peace is boring?" he asked. She glanced over. "Only when I think I need saving." He nodded slowly. "You don't. I know." The next morning, her phone buzzed again. A number she didn't recognize. This time, a voicemail followed. She didn't listen to it. She deleted it. The man behind that number had already received more time than he earned. That day, the bookstore called. "We've had 6 requests for your booklet. Do you want to print more?" Alexis hesitated, then said, "Yes, but this time, let's add something at the end." "What?" "A single page, blank, titled, 'For What You Need to Say Now.'" The owner smiled through the phone. "I like that." "So will they," Alexis said. The days passed. Quietly, cleanly. The scandal faded into background noise for the world. But in boardrooms and legal offices, Cole's name was now a risk, not an asset. His polished brand had cracked. And behind it, there was no center. Just control. Just silence. The wrong kind. A package came in the mail. No name, no note. Inside was a watch. Silver, heavy. The same one he used to leave on their bathroom sink. Alexis stared at it for a long moment, then walked it outside and placed it in the donation box behind the community center. She didn't need it. Not as a reminder. Not as a trophy. Not even as closure. Because when you've truly let go, the past stops feeling like something to process. It becomes something you simply don't carry anymore. That Sunday, she returned to the retreat center in Ojai. Not as a guest, but as a quiet anchor for a new group. She didn't speak much. She lit the welcome candle. She adjusted the chairs. She handed out small blank journals. And when a woman pulled her aside and said, "How did you not scream at him?" Alexis answered gently, "I screamed in the silence. I just didn't need him to hear it to make it real." Later that night, Elias called. "I saw the final board decision. I didn't. He's out, effective immediately. The firm's already pulling his name from the brand." Alexis looked out the window. Moonlight touched the corner of her garden. She took a breath. He was the one who kept things loud. "I'll stay quiet. Always." "No," she said. "Only when I need to." She wrote that night. Not for anyone. Not for publishing. Just for herself. A new journal. First page. "I thought the fire would take me. But it only cleared what I never needed to rebuild." She closed the journal, lit a candle, and went to sleep with a kind of peace that doesn't check headlines or worry about someone else's reputation, because that part of the story had ended, long before the world ever caught up. The invitation came as a folded piece of paper slipped into her mailbox. No envelope, no handwriting on the outside. Inside, in Elias's neat print, dinner, my place. No questions, just food. Say yes. She smiled reading it. Not because it was romantic, but because it was simple. It didn't ask for anything. It offered. That mattered. She wore soft jeans and a loose black sweater. No perfume, no jewelry, just herself. When he opened the door, he was barefoot, apron on, sleeves rolled. He grinned. I burned the rice. She laughed. Perfect. I forgot to bring a candle. His place was small, bare walls, stacks of books, a painting in progress leaning against the far wall. It felt unpolished, honest, like nothing here needed impressing. He poured her water with mint leaves, handed her a plate of roasted vegetables and a lemony chicken that made her eyes water just smelling it. They ate on the floor again. No table, no performance, no pretending. Midway through the meal he asked, "Do you feel ready?" She tilted her head. Ready for what? To be seen again. Fully. Not in fragments. She didn't answer right away. She sipped her water. Then looked at him and said, "I don't need to be seen. I need to be safe while I'm being seen." He didn't blink. He nodded. "I can do that." After dinner, he played old jazz from a dusty speaker. No lyrics, just soft horns and fading pianos. She leaned back against his bookshelf and listened. He didn't move closer, didn't reach for her hand. He just sat near enough that she felt chosen, but not claimed. "I used to think," she said slowly, "that love was about building something together. It's not." She shook her head. "It's about being safe enough to build something apart too, and still come home to each other." He smiled. "You've done a lot of rebuilding." "I had to." "Do you still think you're rebuilding now?" She thought for a second. "No. I think I'm living in what I already finished." He stood then, slow, steady, offered his hand, not to lead her, not to pull her, but to let her choose. She took it. They danced. No rhythm, just feet moving in soft arcs across the hardwood. No tension, no talking, just space and trust. Later, when he walked her to the car, he didn't ask when they'd see each other again. He just said, "I'll leave the porch light on," and she replied, "I'll walk slow enough to see it." That night, in her cottage, she lit a candle by the window, opened her sketchpad, and drew two hands side by side, not touching, not holding. She didn't name it. She didn't date it. She didn't post it, because the moment was enough. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't waiting to feel like herself again. She already was. The market opened at 8. Alexis got there by 8:07, just late enough to skip the crowd. She wore a cotton dress and a wide straw hat. Her list was short: figs, wild honey, rosemary. But her real reason for coming was rhythm, the comfort of slow rows, murmurs of old neighbors, children tugging at sleeves, pointing to jam jars, the smell of soil on fresh herbs. It reminded her that some things in life grow without being chased. She stopped at a small booth tucked near the corner. A local artist had hand-stitched journals laid out in neat rows. She picked up one, wrapped in deep green linen. On the cover, a small embroidered tree. The tag read, "For the life you're already growing." She bought it without speaking. Across the aisle, someone called her name. Softly, not urgently. She turned to find Elias walking toward her with a half-dozen sunflowers in one hand and a crate of peaches in the other. He looked relaxed, like he belonged there, and like she belonged next to him. "Wasn't sure I'd see you here," he said, smiling. "I come when the rosemary's fresh." Of course, priorities. They walked side by side for a few minutes, no rush between stalls. He bought her a croissant. She handed him a jar of fig jam without asking. It felt easy, not romantic, just real. As they reached the parking lot, Elias turned to her. "Want to stop by the press later? I'm printing some old poetry collections." She thought about it, then nodded. Yes, but only if you let me sort the fonts. He grinned. Deal. The shop was small, smelled like paper and pine. He showed her how to align type, set ink, feed the press. She stained her fingers on the first try. He laughed quietly. Not at her, just near her. They took a break in the back garden behind the shop. He brought out 2 lemon sodas and a folded blanket. There wasn't much shade. She didn't need it. You always this quiet when you're happy? He asked. She looked at him. You think I'm happy? I think you're soft. And soft usually lives under happy. She took a long sip of soda, then said, It's strange. What is? I spent so long leaving something hard. I forgot that soft is where I started. He didn't respond right away. Then he said, Then maybe it's not about starting over. Maybe it's about continuing where you were interrupted. That stayed with her. Later, when she sat under the oak tree that evening, sketching in her new journal, she wrote, My life didn't begin again. It resumed. She didn't light a candle that night. She didn't need to soften the air. It was already kind to her. As she lay in bed, she let the window stay open. The breeze moved through gently, and in the quiet space between heartbeats, she whispered, not to anyone, but for herself. This is what it feels like when peace stops asking for permission to stay. A few nights later, Elias invited her over again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She brought a jar of rosemary salt she made that morning, a small lemon, pie, and a sketch she'd been working on in the corner of her journal. She didn't say what it was. She just tucked it in her bag, like a part of herself she was ready to share, but only if the moment asked for it. His place smelled like sage and clean wood. Music played softly, something instrumental, something patient. He greeted her with the same energy he always carried. Not too much, not too little, just enough. They made dinner together. No directions, no lead. She cut the vegetables. He stirred the pan. And somewhere between slicing garlic and tasting sauce, she said, I haven't been scared around you. He glanced over. Good. Not even in the beginning. That's because I didn't show up to fix anything. I just showed up. She nodded. That's the difference. After dinner, they sat by his small bookshelf. He poured tea. She pulled the folded sketch from her bag and handed it to him. He opened it slowly. It was simple. 2 chairs drawn near a window, angled slightly toward each other, not perfectly symmetrical, not perfectly apart. He looked at it for a long time, then said softly, That looks like how this feels. She nodded. It is. They didn't kiss that night. Not yet. But when he walked her to the door, she stood close. Not with tension, with stillness. Are we moving toward something? She asked. Elias held her gaze. I think we already have. When she got home, she didn't feel butterflies. She felt rooted, grounded, ready. The next morning, she wrote, Real love doesn't need to rush in. It recognizes the door has already been open. She closed the journal and placed it beside her window. Then she pulled on her sweater and stepped into her garden. A new neighbor waved across the fence. Alexis waved back. They chatted about basil, dry soil, and the best time to replant lavender. No one brought up the past, and she didn't miss it. Later that week, Elias stopped by unannounced, carrying fresh rolls and a book of vintage architecture. I figured I'd return the favor, he said. You brought dinner last time. She raised an eyebrow. You showed up with bread and paper. He grinned. And emotional stability. She laughed. You win. They sat under the oak tree. She rested her head against the bark. He leaned back with his arms behind him. The wind moved around them like it had always made room for 2. And in that soft silence, he asked, What do you want now? She didn't think long. Something I don't have to survive to keep. He nodded once, then said, I'll be that, or I'll walk away if I'm not. She reached for his hand then, not out of fear, not from loneliness, just choice. And he didn't squeeze, he didn't pull. He simply held her hand, quiet, open, steady. And that was the moment love didn't need to say anything. It was already home, The days felt slower now. Not dragging, not dull, just full in a different way. Alexis woke before the sun most mornings, not because she had to, but because peace had a habit of arriving early. She lit one candle, opened the back door, and stepped barefoot onto the porch with tea in hand. No plans, no noise, no names pulling at her attention. Just air, just breath, just life happening gently around her. In the garden, the rosemary was blooming again. She knelt beside it with a small basket and pruning shears. Yes, the ones Elias eventually returned, and trimmed only what she needed. A neighbor's dog barked 3 fences over. The wind rustled through the oak. Inside, the cottage smelled like lemon and sage. A slow pot of barley simmered on the stove, and her sketchpad sat open on the table, unfinished lines waiting patiently. But Alexis didn't feel behind. She wasn't chasing anything anymore. Later that day, she visited the bookstore. They'd ordered another round of her journals, 20 this time. She helped stock them herself, carefully tucking the small blank page in the back of each one. The owner handed her a new title to read. "Thought you'd like this one. It's quiet but brutal in the best way." Alexis grinned. "Sounds like my type." On her way out, she saw 2 women flipping through her booklet near the poetry shelf. One pointed at a page, the other wiped a tear. Alexis didn't say anything, didn't need to, because her words had already done what they were meant to do, and they belonged to the readers now, not her. That night, Elias texted, "Want to walk the beach at dusk? The sky's showing off tonight." She replied, "Pick me up in 20. I'll bring the good tea." The sand was cold by the time they reached the shoreline. She tucked her hands in her sleeves. He offered his jacket. She declined. "I want to feel everything tonight." He didn't press, just slowed his pace so she could walk barefoot near the edge of the water. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much left to explain. After 30 minutes, they sat on a small boulder together, watching the horizon fade from amber to deep grey blue. He turned to her. "What happens next?" She looked ahead. "Nothing dramatic." "Good." She smiled. "You." He shrugged. "I just want to show up where I'm wanted, and disappear where I'm not." She nodded. "You've done that well." He hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Do you want more?" She knew what he meant. More time, more connection, more of this. She reached for his hand. Not rushed, not unsure. "I want what we already have, and if more happens, let it grow naturally. I'm not building another life. I'm living this one." Back at her place, he didn't stay. He kissed her forehead at the door. Not her lips. Not yet. "Sleep soft," he said. She smiled. "Sleep honest." Inside, she stood in the doorway for a while. Let the stillness wrap around her. Then she walked into the bedroom, pulled her journal from the shelf, and wrote. This is what healing looks like. A life where no one's watching the clock. A morning where no one's missing. A hand that doesn't squeeze but stays. The next day, she got a letter. Handwritten. Unfamiliar handwriting. She opened it slowly. Inside were 5 words. "I hope you're truly free." No signature, no return address. She stared at it for a long moment, then folded it once and placed it at the bottom of a drawer. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shaken. She just didn't need to respond, because the answer was already true. She was free. She spent the rest of the day doing what she loved. Baking shortbread, rearranging throw pillows, answering 2 client emails, sitting on the back porch with her journal in one hand and a glass of water in the other. No rush, no script, no one to convince. That evening, Elias stopped by unannounced again. Brought fresh corn. Said he'd help with dinner if she let him wash the dishes after. She let him. As they cleaned up, she caught her reflection in the kitchen window, smiling without thinking, laughing without effort. And she thought, this is how life was supposed to feel all along. After dinner, he asked if she wanted to keep a key at his place, not move in, not make a plan, just something quiet, something simple. She said yes, then kissed him for the first time, Soft, slow, nothing wrapped in promises, only presence, only now. And in that kiss, there were no ghosts, no shame, no fear of being betrayed again, because she wasn't choosing out of emptiness. She was choosing out of fullness, out of freedom, out of the life she'd finally let herself live. The air felt heavier that morning, not with tension, with meaning, the kind of weight that comes when a season shifts, not suddenly, but with quiet certainty. Alexis stood at her window, watching sunlight move across the floorboards like it had direction. She hadn't planned to write, but her journal was already open. She sat down and let the pen move. I don't think healing is something that ever finishes. It just changes form. It becomes trust in your own feet. It becomes silence that no longer echoes. It becomes choosing peace without apology. She thought about Cole for a moment, not with anger, not with longing, just acknowledgement. He had once been the center of her life. Now, he was just something that happened, a lesson, a mirror, a closed chapter with no bookmark left behind. She pulled out the card he had sent months earlier, the one with no return address. "I hope you're truly free." She read it again, then gently tore it in half, not out of bitterness, but as an act of closing, because she no longer needed a hope that came too late. She had already claimed her own. That afternoon, she visited the vineyard, not the one she once sold. A new one, smaller, humble, owned by a quiet woman named Nora, who reminded her of who she used to be. Alexis helped Nora with some layout ideas, where to place benches, how to soften the lighting, which walking paths would feel most natural. They walked the fields side by side, talking about nothing urgent. It felt like stitching the past into something useful. On the way home, Alexis stopped at her favorite flower stand, picked up a bundle of white tulips. She didn't ask for a ribbon. She didn't need it to look finished. Elias was waiting on her porch when she returned. He stood when she stepped out of the car. "Thought we'd watch the sky again," he said. "Didn't know it was doing anything special." He grinned. "It doesn't need to." They walked to the edge of the hill, just past her garden. No chairs, no setup. They sat on the grass, close but not crowded. He passed her a thermos of mint tea. She handed him one of the tulips. They didn't say much, because the quiet had become familiar. Safe, not empty. As the sky turned from gold to mauve, Elias finally said, "Do you ever miss who you were before all this?" Alexis thought about it, then shook her head. "No, because I never really knew her. I only knew who I was trying to be for someone else." He looked at her. "And now, I know who I am when no one's watching. And I like her." He smiled, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a tiny stone. Hand-polished, the words still etched on its surface, "Found this last week. Thought of you." She turned it over in her hand. "Still what?" she asked. "Still healing, still strong, still here, still choosing." She placed the stone in her pocket. "I'll keep it with me." That night, Alexis lit a single candle. No reason, no occasion. Just a soft flame flickering against a wall she painted herself. She sat by the window with her journal in her lap and wrote the final entry. "He hid another life. I built mine in the open. He held on to what looked good. I let go of what didn't feel real. He chose silence to deceive. I chose silence to reclaim. And when I finally walked away, I didn't lose. I returned to myself." She closed the journal, stood in the stillness of her home, and whispered the only thing that mattered anymore. "I'm whole now." If this story moved you, made you reflect, or reminded you of the quiet strength we all carry, don't leave without showing support. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Alexis's shoes? Like the video if you believe peace is the greatest comeback. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more emotional, morally rich stories that speak to the soul. And remember, not every revenge is loud. Sometimes, the quietest exits leave the deepest impact. See you in the next story.